My first Bitcoin film, Banking on Bitcoin, premiered on Netflix in 2017, a year when Bitcoin's price soared. Now, in 2024, Bitcoin is experiencing another surge, yet questions about this supercharged financial product remain. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies keep defying the odds, but their real benefits are often buried under misinformation and self-serving hype artists pumping their own bags. In 2023, we set out to find real answers by bringing together the most credible voices on both sides of the Bitcoin debate. We didn't shy away from exploring the good, the bad, or the ugly. Ahead of our upcoming feature film, The Man Who Killed Satoshi, we're excited to share these one-on-one debates. They shed light on the often misrepresented world of cryptocurrencies, covering topics like Bitcoin's explosive price rise, its benefits, risks, environmental impact, and the enigma of its creator. This series offers something rare, putting top voices from both sides of the Bitcoin debate face to face.
Are you pro-freedom?
That feels dramatic.
Forcing them to confront opposing views directly and in person. In our first installment, Bomani Jones, sports journalist with sharp takes on Bitcoin, debates Peter McCormack, Bitcoin advocate and host of What Bitcoin Did.
Most people are not coming into this to change the world. They're coming into this to make some money.
Why do you care?
As they reflect on Bitcoin's last boom and how it could predict the rise and fall of the one we're in now. Welcome to Mining for Truth, the Bitcoin Summits. Okay, Bitcoin, has it boomed or is it just beginning? Go.
I feel like the burden of proof always goes toward the Bitcoin acolyte on this one.
I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's boomed. I don't think it's died. I think Bitcoin just exists.
The question for me and why I would be inclined to say that it was a boom is that it seemed to be a very particular set of circumstances that led to the rise, through 2020 and into 2021 about this, right? Especially in the United States. A lot of surplus money in the economy from stimulus packages, and a lot of people not really able to spend money because they weren't able to go anywhere, which then leads to all these dollars, and in part, people looking for thrills, people looking for something to gamble on. There are all these different factors that, hey, I heard about this thing that can help me get rich. And a lot of people went into that direction, and we went and we saw, it went and went and went, and then it stopped. And it leads me to say, okay, that is a boom.
Does it matter?
I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't matter, right? The reason I guess it does matter is that the way the cryptocurrencies have been sold to people is here's a way for you to get rich, which is much different than I think any other financial sector advertising that we've seen anywhere else. You see a Charles Schwab commercial and it's very boring because you want your money to be boring, right? The crypto ads, fortune favors the brave. I'm not brave about my money. Most people aren't brave about their money, but people want to get rich. And so the sell of this to the mainstream in order to try to gain adoption is this is a way for you to come up. This is a way for you to make a profit. And if that's the case, then it becomes very important whether or not it's been a boom, because most people are not coming into this to change the world. They're coming into this to make some money.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Okay, firstly, you are brave with your money because you're holding dollars. I think that's a pretty brave position.
Now, what's brave about it?
Well, any money you hold in a bank, any savings is getting eviscerated by inflation. So that's a brave thing to do, to hold on to dollars, especially when I think the US government's down to its last 50 billion in the bank. You got a debt ceiling approaching. They're about to print a bunch more money because their commitments. And so that's going to lead to higher inflation again with the massive increase in the money supply. So any money you're holding in your bank, if you want to save for the long term, I got 2 kids, right? So I save my kids. Any money you hold in the bank is getting eviscerated by inflation. So
is it getting eviscerated though? That feels dramatic.
Even at 10% inflation a year, how many years do you think you've got to keep your money in the bank till it's lost most of its value? I mean, the math is pretty easy on that. So I think you are brave. You're holding dollars. I think you're a good, American patriot, being very brave with your US dollars. And secondly, look, it's a myth that Bitcoiners promote it as something to get rich. Grifters might do, influencers online do. I've made 650 podcast episodes about this. We don't talk about Bitcoin as a way to get rich. It's irresponsible. We talk about Bitcoin as a free, open market form of money. And we talk about the benefit it has for whether you're here in the US wanting to avoid inflation, whether you're a human rights activist, whether you're living under an authoritarian regime, which is half the world's population, whether you're living under massive inflation here at 10%, probably 20%. If you're living in Argentina at the moment, you've got 100% inflation, capital controls. Yeah, Bitcoin is a lifeboat for these people. And so I understand your arguments. I've seen them all. They're not from journalists. They're from propagandists who just write nonsense.
I don't think it's fair to say that those arguments are necessarily just coming from propagandists. Like, I don't think I was like, hey, I went and looked up Propaganda Monthly, and they just told me all these things to say. Like, for me at least, because I think this becomes a dangerous thing also in this discourse where it becomes very easy for people to ascribe that the other side is just falling for something, right? And so I feel like when I hear you speak in those terms, particularly not knowing me, then it's just like, you can see these things in mainstream press. Okay, cool. That's not necessarily the place that I'm coming from. Because when you say we don't put Bitcoin out here as a place to make a lot of money, well, that depends on who we are. Because I do think that most of the arguments that come up, you talk about like people under authoritarian regimes and so forth and so on, they make sense. And I think these are all fair criticisms of the current financial system, right? But it does not necessarily mean that what we're getting back on the other side from the Bitcoin side is the right way to then go about taking care of this or the way to go about handling it. But in this country, you could say that it's just the grifters that are putting this out as a way to get rich. It's a lot of them, and a lot of them are doing this for big brands. Like, I work in sports. Crypto.com Arena is now, was the Staples Center, is now there. The advertising campaigns that we saw in this country absolutely were selling the idea to people that if you want to get rich, you're going to have to take some chances. And this is something, cryptocurrency, that you might find to be dangerous, but this is the way for you to go about getting this money. So yes, it may be grifters, but I think for most people who are not like really digging in and doing a certain level of research to find out what's going on, the people who have brought this into their space are in fact the grifters. They are in fact the ones who are carrying this message the strongest. And for me at least, with cryptocurrency and talking to people, it feels very much like the world of cocaine, where somebody once told me about cocaine, that the worst thing about cocaine is the people that you meet when you use cocaine. The people that you meet, at least in my travels, that are the strongest advocates for crypto in general and Bitcoin in particular, just so happen to be the least trustworthy people that I know. Now, is that the fault of the Bitcoin? No. Is that, though, somewhat reflective of how it is being pushed and how it is being promoted and how it is reaching most people's consciousness? Yes, and I do think that that's very important.
Yeah, so the big mistake you're making is you're conflating crypto and Bitcoin.
No, I'm not conflating them.
Well, you keep swapping between the term crypto and Bitcoin, and you mentioned crypto.com.
Yes.
I have zero interest in crypto.com. I don't care about them
Okay.
or what they do. I don't know their business. I don't know who works with them.
I am saying, I think that for people, there's a general argument about the role of all cryptocurrencies, of which Bitcoin is one.
And that's the only similarity is they both have these blockchains. But there is one fundamental difference. I mean, there's a lot, but there's one fundamental difference between Bitcoin and every other cryptocurrency is Bitcoin is the only one that is meaningfully decentralized. And this is important. And the reason you want something that's meaningfully decentralized is you want to create a form of money which is separate from the government, which they can't switch off. You cannot kill Bitcoin. There's no central point of attack. And that is great because we do want to wrestle the control of money away from government. And this isn't me just being some anarchist, because I'm not. I'm pro-democracy. This isn't just me being a conspiracy theorist. It's out there today. A debt ceiling is about to be hit in the next week or so here in the US. $31.8 trillion of debt you have. They are going to have to print more money. You've got social security payments to cover. You've got interest on bonds to cover. You're selling your debt around the world. The dollar is a Ponzi. It is broken. All money is a proxy for time. You go to work, you spend your time, and you earn money, right? And when you earn that money, you have the right, you should, as a human being, have the right to save that money for things you want to buy in the future or things you want to do for your family. If that money is getting eviscerated by inflation because the government has out of control monetary policy, then absolutely we need something like Bitcoin to rein them in. Why do you care? Like, are you pro-freedom?
I've not met the person who wasn't.
Okay, but there are a lot of people who aren't pro-freedom, I'll assure you.
Yeah, no, they're not going to say it. You know what I mean? Like, are you pro-freedom? Hell no, nobody's doing that.
I mean, you've got a guy here who runs the biggest car company in the world, Elon Musk, who turned off, who censored tweets during the Turkish election. You've got people here who are not pro-freedom.
Yeah, and if you asked him if he was pro-freedom, he'd say yes. Like, that's all I'm saying. Nobody's going to tell you no.
Okay, but if you are pro-freedom, why do you care that Bitcoin exists? Why don't, if you just left it alone, why does it matter to you?
I am fascinated by the idea of a basically populist in large part decision to overthrow or replace what the money system is as it stands, right? So this is interesting to me. I've got a few degrees in economics. I find these things to be interesting as things to talk about and to look at. It is also something I think to care about, again, because even if you want to be specific about Bitcoin and not the broader industry of cryptocurrency, is that how this affects people who are the more vulnerable. So to your point, one of the selling points of Bitcoin is what it could do to help people who are vulnerable to a number of things, being frozen out of the banking system, being under authoritarian regimes, so forth and so on. Yes, but selling people something where you know that they have these vulnerabilities and it makes sense why they would need something else, or everything that you say about what's going on with the financial system, all of those things can be true. Those are not necessarily arguments for the alternative that you pose. They are arguments for the need for an alternative. So is this alternative that we talk about with Bitcoin, is this the way to go? Because I do hear you say we need something that is decentralized. Theoretically, I understand that argument. I'm trying to figure out how many times something decentralized and deregulated, is that the best idea for it to be those things? There's a safety that comes from it necessarily, but does somebody need to be in charge somewhere of how these things go? My inclination is generally to say yes. Now, I don't think that you're, like you said, I don't think you're some sort of anarchist or just want to see the whole world fall apart. But to make the argument that what we need is something decentralized, cool, but the argument it can't really stop there simply by identifying the fact that we need an alternative to what it is. Well, what's the alternative? Okay, we have this thing. All right. This thing then requires a measure of scrutiny. So if it is as revolutionary as you say, then I should care, because if this is the future as you put it, why would I care? I kind of care about the future.
I don't know what your argument is.
I don't have an argument. I'm just trying to answer your question. Like this is the point that I'm simply making is identifying the need for an alternative to the status quo does not mean that the proposed thing is intrinsically good. And I feel like the argument that you made to me was primarily all the reasons that the status quo does not work and why we need an alternative, but not why the alternative that you propose is the proper one.
Well, I throw it back at you. Why is it bad?
I feel like the point of why is it good is for you to have